So our special guest today is CJ Harris. Welcome to the show.
Hey there. Appreciate you having me. Happy to be on with you.
It's a pleasure. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started in writing?
Yeah, sure thing. So, I write mostly, in the horror genre and suspense, a little bit of mystery. I do write a few like detective stories and FBI stories and things like that. But yeah, for the most part, kind of naturally drawn to like the horror genre and things like that. And really, I mean, it kind of all started at a young age for me. Growing up, my nickname growing up as a kid was always Monk Monk, and because I go around like as a toddler, like when I first learned to talk, and I'd point under the beds and under couches and stuff, and I'd be saying "monk monk," and basically what I was saying was there's like a monster under the bed or under the couch or something. So, and I grew up, reading and watching, Goosebumps. I was a huge fan of R.L. Stine, me and my cousins, and just always reading or watching one of his stories. I also love watching like Tales from the Crypt and Twilight Zone, things like that. And and then I remember my mom, anytime Sylvia Brown would be on like the Montel Williams show, she'd holler at me and be like, hey, Sylvia Brown's on, and she's talking about ghosts or talking about, UFOs or the unexplained, anything like that. I've just always been kind of naturally bent towards that, sort of thing. And I remember growing up as a kid, my aunt, which my mom's sister, she lived in Key West, Florida, and she's a huge horror fan, just like myself, and loves horror movies and books and things like that. And she'd come and visit us, in South Carolina, about once or twice a year or so, and she'd stay with us for like a week at a time. And basically, what we do, we kind of like a ritual. What we do, we go pick her up from the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we go to our favorite Mexican place, have some good Mexican food, and then after that we go to Blockbuster. I guess I'm dating myself here, but we'd run to make a Blockbuster run and check out some of the hottest new horror movies or mystery films and things like that. And also watch some of the classics too. Anything like Chainsaw Massacre or the new Jason movie or Halloween movie, anything like that. And basically, we'd have like a horror movie binge right up the next week, and eat leftover Mexican food and salsa and chips and things like that. And I just always kind of just been naturally drawn to that sort of thing. And I guess my family as well. And really for me, for the most part, is mostly just watching the movies and shows. I wasn't really a big reader growing up. I'd read a little bit of R.L. Stine, Goosebumps and things like that. But it really wasn't until I was about probably, I'd say maybe 11 or 12 years old. I was in a Walmart with my parents. We just got some groceries in the checkout aisle. And, being a kid, my eyes was wandering to like the candy section, looking at the candy and stuff. They're in the checkout aisle. And I remember to my right, I can still picture it to this day, there's a little book shelf thing, display of like all like the newest mass market paperbacks and stuff. And I just, was kind of glancing over it. And this one book in particular really grabbed my attention, and it was solid black, had a black cover, and had one word on the front of it, monster. It was in this red writing, kind of cool, creepy font on it. I was like, what in the world is that? I gotta go check it out. So walk over there next to my parents at the book rack and everything, and pick up this book called Monster by Frank Peretti. And at that time, I had no clue in the world who Frank Peretti was. I hadn't really read anything, like I said, other than Goosebumps or something. Yeah. But I just had to check out his book, see what it was about, and looked at the cover, looked at the back of it, and read the blurb and everything. And it was basically about this husband and wife that go camping up in the secluded Idaho mountains, and there's some people coming up missing. There's a monster lurking in the woods and stuff. And so I was instantly just instantly connected with the story, the plot, and everything, and convinced my parents to get the book for me. And man, I read that book front to back probably 3 or 4 times in the span of a year. I was really just, hooked by the story and the characters and everything. And even to this day, I still have that book on my shelf today. And even to this day, I'll still go back from time and time and read it, pick it up and read it from, time to time. But I guess that was kind of my first, attempt at reading a novel and kind of getting sucked into the fiction world and things like that. And then you fast forward, it really wasn't about my sophomore year in college that I started writing a little bit of fiction myself. And, kind of started playing with it here and there. I was a sophomore in college, and I remember it was a fall semester because around Halloween, and I was in a elective class, which happened to be a poetry class, and our professor had us reading a lot of like Edgar Allan Poe and some Charles Dickens, Robert Frost. And around Halloween, he wanted us for like a 2 week span just to focus on like creating like creepy poems, like horror poems. Kind of had like an eerie, feel to it and things like that. And so for those 2 weeks, that was really kind of my first time of learning to craft stories that have that eerie feel to it, creating that eerie atmosphere, and just learning how to make the words flow, to where it kind of are like candy to the ears, so to speak. And that was really my first attempt at writing fiction, or at that point is writing poetry, but that's kind of my introduction to the fiction world and things like that.
Yeah.
And from there, I started reading a lot of horror novels and things. And it wasn't until about 2 years later that actually tried my first attempt to write a novel. Me and my parents and my family had made a road trip from South Carolina to Northern California to go check out the redwoods and see the redwood forest, something we'd always wanted to do. And, we decided to kind of knock it off the bucket list and went on a family road trip. It was me and my parents, my grandparents, my aunt, and my nephew. And we went out there, and I think it was sometime in probably first, maybe January or so. I remember my nephew had to kind of finagle his teachers a little bit to be able to get out of school to go on a trip. But we was gone for about 2 weeks, but he only missed like a week because it's kind of like right after winter break or something like that. But anyway, the teacher said, they was okay with him missing that week of class as long as when he came back, he had a story to present to the class based on his trip, they took and everything. And so I started helping my nephew kind of come up with a story and, craft like a little short story based on our trip and everything, and, added some fiction into it, and just kind of crafted a little, cool little story for him. And then, getting back from that trip and everything, I couldn't get that idea out of my head, the story we came up with. And I just kept, thinking, well, what if this happens, or what if, that happened, and what if this character does this or does that? And I really just kind of took my time and sat down and kind of started expanding upon that story and just kind of seeing where I could go with it. And about a month or so later, after I did a little bit of research and kind of tinkered with it, I basically had like a kind of a novella fleshed out. It was about 100 pages to 100, probably 100 to 150 pages or so, kind of fleshed out. And that was really my first attempt at writing a little bit of longhand fiction. And from there, I sent it off, got printed just, for a few copies for myself, my family and friends and stuff. And I really didn't think, much would come of it. I thought it'd just be something I did one time, just gave it some family and friends, and thought that'd be it, the end of it. But, man, I was just really hooked, in that writing process. And before I knew it, I got that story finished, and then I had an idea for another story. And, within about a year's time or so, I was, 400 pages into a detective novel, kind of like a little bit of a horror novel based on, some missing people and a serial killer and things like that, with a little bit of paranormal, mixed in. And by then I was fully hooked, hook, line, and sinker. I was fully hooked by that point. And just started reading everything I get my hands on as far as, the craft of writing, and started attending writing conferences, started watching a ton of YouTube videos, and really just started devouring every horror novel I get my hands on. I really started reading a ton of Stephen King's books, Dean Koontz, and really just kind of jumped off the deep end and learned to swim, so to speak. And and that's pretty much how I got my start. Like I said, I've written 4 novels so far, over about 3 dozen short stories, all pretty much based in that horror, mystery, suspense genre. But that's pretty much how I got started in it.
So how do you come up with an idea?
Yeah, I mean, really for me, I try to lean into like my own, personal experiences and, my family's experiences, stories, I've been told through the years, and I always kind of got my antennas up. I'm always listening, to my family and friends, talk about events in their life and stories and things. And then also, it comes from a lot, TV shows and movies and books and stuff I read. I'm always kind of just always, like I said, I've always got my antennas up, always, listening and looking out for something that I can, build on and just kind of see where it goes. But, I mean, for the most part, I try to keep my stories, rooted in realism, I guess. And I try to keep my stories, based on, like I said, things I've experienced or things my family's experienced, and try to keep that, reality aspect to it a little bit. And, basically, I just try to, think of a character that, I feel like people can relate to, that's, kind of a blue collar type, person. And, try to make them very relatable. So, when stuff starts happening, it feels like, the reader's like, well, wow, this could really happen. It could happen to me or happen to somebody I know. And I try to build on it from there. And then, and really, when I start building my characters, I really try to flesh them out to a point to where I know, what kind of music they listen to, what kind of TV shows they watch, what's their favorite restaurant, who's their favorite celebrity. I try to really, dive deep into my main characters and figure out who they truly are as people. So that way they feel like real people on the page and everything. And and then I basically just, try to find something, where I could take that character and put them in a circumstance and just kind of see how they fight their way through it, kind of put them in a circumstance where up against, crazy odds, and they got, push back to darkness, and just kind of see where it leads. But yeah, I mean, there's not really one way I'd say I come up with my ideas. It's just that I'm always just kind of always, listening, observing, and, taking in things. And I'll have an idea hit me and I'll jot a quick note down in a notebook. And then, every few days I'll kind of start adding a little bit of things, to it, and really just kind of see where it leads and go from there.
Yeah. So you mentioned about like characters and readers wanted to be sort of like relatable to your characters. I probably said that all wrong, so I do apologize. So how do you create compelling characters?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I try to write, people, characters that are, like I said, it's just, somebody I feel like they can, people can relate to. And I try to, like I said, really dig deep and figure out who they are as a person, and try to figure out, like I said, what kind of music they listen to, what's their favorite, restaurant, and just, try to figure out who they are as people, what way they come across as a real person, not just a cardboard, type character, and also, try to figure out, what's their motivations in life, and what's their goals, and what's their fears, as a person, and their dreams and stuff like that. And kind of what I do is, like, when I have my main characters set up, I kind of have like character bios set up for each of my main characters, and I'll just kind of run down that list of just brainstorming who they are as a person. And that way, when the reader reads about that person, they're reading about somebody they can hopefully connect with. And, hopefully I make it easy for them to cheer for that character through the story. That way they stay engaged in that story when they see that character being, tossed into a terrible circumstance or something. They're engaged in that story and they want to see what happens to that character and cheer for them, to come out on the other side and everything.
Yeah. I mean, they have got to be relatable, haven't they, so that the readers can sort of like say, oh, yeah, this can happen to me, or I've been in this sort of situation before.
Absolutely. 100%.
So do you have a particular theme that you often explore in your work?
Yeah, I mean, every story is different for me, but I mean, for the most part, I try to lead my characters into the darkness, by setting up the different circumstances and different stories and stuff. But really, it's all about finding hope in that darkness, and finding a way out of that circumstance, and coming out on the other side a better person, and having grown through that experience they went through. And really, that's kind of, I guess, my theme in each story. I mean, like I say, each story is different, but overall, I try to I write, dark stuff and, creepy stuff and horror and all that, but I always try to have it to where, there's hope in that darkness, and, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And that's kind of what I try to do. I write what I love. I love, horror and mystery and things like that. And that's what I tend to write, but I also try to, weave away from my character to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and to be able to fight their way out of that darkness. And like I said, hopefully you show it, like I said, there is hope in the darkness for them.
Yeah. Do you always like to have a happy ending at the end of your books, or do you sort of like have an unhappy ending? Which do you normally prefer?
Yeah, I mean, For the most part, I prefer to have a happy ending, but at the same time, I try not to manipulate the story to fit how I think it should go. I try to let my characters lead, how the story should go. And I mean, for the most part, I try to have a happy ending, but there are some times where the characters and the plot just didn't allow that to happen, and I try not to go against the grain. I try to let my characters really lead the way and let them decide, how the ending should be. But I mean, me as a writer, I always, try to have a happy ending at the end of it. But like I said, it just kind of depends on the characters and, depends on where they want to take it and where they want the story to go from there.
So how do you like to pace the story? Are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
When I first started, I would probably say I was more of a pantser. I really didn't outline too much or plot too much out. I really just kind of came up with a few characters, came up with a plot, and I just started writing and seeing where it would go. But over the years, I guess I've kind of done both. I'm kind of like a hybrid, I guess. I've kind of drifted a little bit to outline a little bit, like maybe chapter by chapter, kind of like the big idea in each chapter. I try not to write the ending until I get there. I don't want to kind of steer my writing to one specific place, but I try to have a general idea, like a general outline of how each chapter should go and how it should flow together. And then once I get into that chapter, I kind of, pants my way through it, with having a general idea for each chapter, how it needs to kind of be outlined and themed and things like that. But like I said, I kind of do both, I guess. I'll outline a little bit, chapter by chapter, how it needs to fit in the story, and then but once I get into a chapter, I just kind of let my characters take over and lead me where the story needs to go. And I'll have a general idea of how I think the story's going to end, and I'll have a general destination I'm trying to get to. But oftentimes, once I get halfway to 3/4 of the way through the book, I'll find that ending is completely different from how I thought it would be first starting out. And when that happens, I don't I try not to push back. I try to just let my characters keep the flow and let them decide how the story should end and everything.
Brilliant. So, have you based any of these off your own experiences or your own fears?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few stories, especially a lot of my short stories and stuff, are based off like, ghost stories I've been told as a kid, from my family and experiences that, things that's happened to my brother. I have an older brother who's about 10 years older than me. And me and him both are avid outdoorsmen. We did a lot of fishing and hunting and things like that. And our brother's had a few creepy encounters in the woods and stuff. Just weird things that's happened to him in the woods at night. And I try to incorporate a lot of that stuff into my short stories. Especially usually around Halloween or so each year, I'll try to release like a book of short stories, and a lot of those short stories I'll try to draw on personal experiences or like I said, stories I've been told as a kid growing up, or stories from my brother and things like that. And I mean, a few of the stories and a few of the places in the novels and stuff I'll write from my own personal experiences, just going back to like an encounter I had in my own life where maybe I got really afraid at one point or something. I'll try to go back and remember how I felt physically, emotionally, and things like that, and try to draw on that to help me write my character, how they're feeling in that moment, and how they're expressing herself and things like that.
Brilliant. So what has been the most difficult scene that you've ever had to write, and why was it challenging to you?
Oh goodness. I'd probably say in my novel The Reaping, it was a detective story, and it involves this detective who's kind of on the brink of retirement. She's been doing it for about 20 plus years or so, and she's kind of seen a lot of things for her career, and she's kind of trying to wrap things up, kind of ready to walk away from it after seeing what she's had to deal with through the years and stuff. But there's this one killer one case that she wasn't able to solve through her career, and it always kind of hangs over her like a black cloud, so to speak. And that's really kind of one thing keeping her in in the department, and one reason why she doesn't want to retire quite yet, she's kind of in this battle. One half of her wants to retire and walk away, and the other half's like, no, I got to solve this case and you find out who this killer is and stuff. And towards the end of her career, the killer ends up reemerging, and basically what he does is he'll murder the parents of these kids who are like being mistreated or abused and things like that. And he'll murder their parents, and then he'll kidnap the kids, and the kids are never seen again. They just kind of disappear. And so the detective's kind of on this hunt. She's solving this case, trying to figure out what's happening to the kids and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, that was a kind of a dark place for me to go, but it had a good ending to it. I don't write anything. I don't describe like child abuse or nothing like that. I'll kind of speak to it a little bit to kind of shine a light on it, but I don't get into details or nothing like that. But just having the overall thought of what, and having having to think like my detective of what could be happening to the kids and things like that. That was a pretty dark time in that story. But like I said, it ended up having a good ending, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but yeah, that was probably one of the hardest few scenes I had to write, just dealing with that, her having to track down that killer and trying to find the kids and stuff like that.
Brilliant. Sounds a really good book.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so what's been one of your most popular books, and why do you think the readers loved it?
Probably my novel Devil's Den. I feel like it's been the story that people was related to the most, and I definitely got the most reviews off of it. And it really just kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning about how I craft my characters. With Devil's Den, my main two characters, one is a husband and wife. The husband worked at a paper mill in Georgetown, South Carolina. Just a everyday, blue collar type of guy, stand up guy. And his wife was a school teacher at the local high school there. And they was, just really, down to earth people. They had everyday kind of struggles and, hopes in life that, we all have. And basically, the reader gets, kind of introduced to them as, just ordinary people. And then as they follow along, they're sucked into this story where they're involved with this guy who's a new worker at the paper mill. And he also ends up being, a big part of the story, and a real creepy guy and stuff. And so basically you as the reader, this guy's, killing some people. He's a bad dude and bad guy. And then, the characters are kind of oblivious to it, and, they get sucked into this darkness, and they're, having to fight their way through it and stuff. And really, I feel like my readers kind of connect with that story because, like I said, my main character is everyday, common people that people can relate to. And, like I said, they have their own, hopes and dreams and fears and struggles and things like that. But it's just, a story that I think people can relate with, and, characters people can relate with.
Yeah. So have you had any memorable reactions from your readers that you can share with us?
Probably, I guess the biggest review that kind of stuck out in my mind, really, I guess two of them, but early on with Devil's Den, I had a lady reach out to me. She just messaged me on Facebook. She had bought my book, saying on one of my Facebook posts that I posted in a group I was in. And she reached out to me as, tell me how much she loved the book, and told me it was a roller coaster of a ride, and kept her up at night and things like that. And she told me, she said, the way you write your Southern characters with like their Southern accents and personalities and stuff, she said it really reminds me of a young Pat Conroy, just the way you're able to craft your characters and stuff. And that was a huge compliment for me, just for her to see that and recognize that. That was a huge compliment for me to know that my characters resemble somebody, Pat Conroy wrote about and things like that. And then I recently had a review from a lady who reached out. She read my book off of Amazon and left a review, and said is my book of short stories, and she said the short stories remind her of like Stephen King type stories, just the way I crafted the characters with the small town atmosphere and different scenarios they were in and stuff like that. So that's probably been my two biggest reactions for my books, and probably my two best reviews so far that I've gotten.
That's fantastic. So have you got any exciting projects that you're currently working on at the moment?
Yeah. So actually, kind of got 3 projects that I'm working on right now. I got one novel that I've written. I've been working on for about a year and a half or so now, kind of off and on. But it's been kind of expanding on it. But I've got the first draft written. I'm kind of going back through it now and doing my editing work, adding some things to the plot and character development, and and taking some stuff out as I go. But that's a story that's based up in the mountains in North Carolina, and it's kind of got like a creepy town atmosphere. It's like there's this cult that's involved in the mountains that a lot of people try to don't want to talk about. There's a lot of hush hush going on within the community, and this one guy goes back to this one guy grew up in this town where all this is happening at, and his mom still lives there. And as he gets older, he decides to go back and try more or less talk his mom into leaving and getting out of town. There's a lot of weird things going on. He's kind of fearful of her well-being and stuff. And when he goes back, everybody's kind of watch him as he walks down the street, and he walks into the diner. Everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder at him, and just kind of gives this creepy vibe about this small town. There's a lot of weird, creepy things going on and stuff. But I'm going back now, kind of polishing that up and working on that. And then I've got a series I'm planning to release sometime next year. It's going to be kind of like I got about 20 books lined up for it, but it's kind of like novellas. They're all going to be about 100 to 150 pages long, but it's about this old man who lives in Louisiana, and he ends up having some weird encounters behind his house in the swamps and stuff, and kind of gets into like paranormal, unexplained type stuff. And basically, through the series, he kind of gets sucked into that world of just trying to, uncover these unexplained things and paranormal stuff. And he kind of becomes like an offhand private investigator into this kind of stuff. He like kind of starts a side business and kind of starts investigating other stories in the area and things like that. But I kind of have in the mind of like it being like a kind of like an X-Files type vibe. There's like just a lot of different weird things going on. He's trying to help other people, get to the bottom of it and get to the truth and stuff. But so I've got that plan for next year I'm working on. And then I'm actually working on a story for Christmas. I'm working on it's called A Christmas Spirit, and it's kind of my take on like a modern day Christmas Carol. But it's got ghosts in it. It's around Christmas time, and it's kind of this it's not as it's a little bit different from what I've been writing. I usually write horror and stuff like that. This is more of a feel good story with a little bit of paranormal mixed in. It's not really meant to scare people. It's just more of a feel good story. It's got a little bit of paranormal and stuff mixed in. So like I said, it's kind of my homage, I guess, to Christmas Carol a little bit. But that's kind of like a short story. I'll be releasing around Christmas time for that one.
Fantastic. So what advice would you give to aspiring writers who want to break into the horror genre?
Yeah, my biggest thing I would say is just read and read. Get your hands on as many horror novels as you can get your hands on, and start reading, just seeing how the professionals do it. And read horror novels. Attend some writing conferences, watch YouTube, and pick up some books that just kind of teach about, the craft of writing. I know Stephen King has a really great book. It's called On Writing. It's a book that's been very helpful to me. Just kind of teaches the ins and outs of, how he goes about his craft and the way he does it. And another book that's been really helpful to me is it's called Story Trumps Structure, and it's by Stephen James. Stephen James. But it's a really good book. He's a thriller writer himself, kind of writes like thrillers and suspense novels, things like that. Most of his stuff is like based on like FBI detective type novels, but he's got a lot of good books out there. But that one book he wrote, it's called Story Trumps Structure. It's about how to make your craft better through character development, how to plot your novel, how to write better dialogue, things like that. Those two books, Story Trumps Structure and On Writing by Stephen King, and Story Trumps Structures by Stephen James. But both of those books have been tremendous help to me through the years, and I still go back to them even now and read through them and mark up stuff and take notes and stuff. But But yeah, that's
Yeah.
and write, and you gotta write. You gotta just like everything. Practice makes perfect, and if you want to write, you gotta read and you gotta write. That'd be my two biggest advice is just read a lot and write a lot. And when you write, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't feel like that. Everything you write has to be perfect. Just write, get your ideas on paper, and you can always go back and edit later. Forgot who said it, but I know there's a quote out there. It says you can't edit a blank page, and to me, that's so true. Just write, get it on paper. You can always go back and edit it later. So.
Yeah, that's right. And it's about having the motivation as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yep.
Okay, so where can we find your book, CJ?
Yeah, so I'm on Amazon. You can find me on Amazon. You can search Randall Lane, and you should see some of my books pop up. Should see my author page pop up on Amazon. I'm also on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, places like that. And you can also find me on Facebook just by searching Randall Lane Fiction on Facebook. I have a Facebook account there. And I'm also on Instagram. My username is Randall Lane _31. Have a lot of, kind of keep people update with my writing, how things are coming.
Yeah.
But you can kind of keep up with me on there. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's fantastic. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
That's all right.
Well, thank you very much for appearing on the show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a blast.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. And I hope everything goes well with your new releases and obviously your other books as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.